too. Indiana in the morning, and it's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, WCCSradio.com. Hey, good morning, and thanks for being with us on this Friday morning. Bob Pollock is with us from the Extension Service, and we're going to give you the opportunity to give him a call, ask him a question about your lawns and gardens and flowers and plants and all of those wonderful things. It is gardening season. People are going to be thinking about getting their gardens in now. And in fact, many of them probably, if they have had the decent enough weather to do it, they've got a good part of the garden in.
Right.
Even though they might still have had to cover them up a couple of times.
Yes.
But let's talk a little bit about early season garden preparation, because it's time to get it in. And I'm particularly interested in the amount of work that you put into the soil. Do you want it to be really, really fine? Do you want to continually till it until it is like that? Or is it best to back off a little bit on that? I should tell folks as well, by the way, that we're presented by Marcus and Mack, voted best law firm and best personal injury lawyer 3 years in a row, and the best of Indiana County contests. Visit them online, marcusandmack.com. There, I gave you a couple.
That was good. I'm glad.
I'm think about it.
Glad you recognized them. There are different schools of thought on that.
Uh-huh.
The more we till the soil, the more we tend to reduce the structure. Yeah, the least we can do, the better. Maybe that's the way to say it.
Okay.
You know, we've grown up. We've done this all our lives and seen other people do it. You know, you got to get in there and you got to till it till it's as fine as dust, and that ruins the soil structure. And we need that soil structure to allow
air and oxygen.
Yep.
Okay.
We want to have oxygen in there. We want to have room for water to be in there too. Pore space between the particles. We want to have different size particles, bigger, smaller. Bigger, medium, small. In our soils, we tend to have that anyway because of our soils tend to be on the more clay. We have more clay content, and so we have finer textured, a lot more smaller particles in there. Sometimes too many fine ones. But the more we chew that soil up and the finer we make it, the more likely we're to have trouble down the road.
Okay.
We won't be, it's not as good a place for the plant roots to grow. And so we're going to have trouble. And it's easier to compact that soil. And then when we need that pore space for oxygen, because plant roots need oxygen too, those plants need oxygen, and they also need water. They also need easier place to grow, So less is better, and doing it at the right times when we don't have too much moisture in the ground.
Okay.
And I know it's hard, and this spring's been a little bit challenging. We had some opportunities early, but if you didn't get to it, then you might have had to work it a little bit, when you didn't want to. It was still a little moist in there to be working it. And if you have to do it, then try not to overdo it. Do the least you have to do to get the soil worked up. Some people use no-till. They have a no-till garden, even for their vegetables, where they haven't tilled that spot in a lot of years. They'll just dig a hole and plant a plant. And that's okay, because that soil structure pretty much remains intact over time, which is good. Now, sometimes and then they'll cover it with fabric maybe to make it easier, keep the weeds down. Occasionally, it is good to maybe take the cover off, and then if we need to make adjustments, do a soil test. Every 3 to 5 years, get a soil test. Where are nutrient levels? Where's the pH? And then you can even do a separate organic matter content test, only like $5 more for them to analyze how much organic matter is in there, because that can be a measure of, and a lot of our soils only have maybe 2 to 3% organic matter, and so we need to be adding that over time. And of course, we can do that with plants, green manure crops, cover crops, as we would group them, manures, compost, all those things would be in that organic matter category. And even if you're doing kind of a minimum till or a little bit more of a no-till where you just dig a hole enough to get a plant in, you can still incorporate some organic matter, while you're working that soil up with the spade, to do that, just to give some extra, and it adds a little bit of nutrients as well when you do that.
Mm-hmm. Translate that then from the garden to what is becoming an increasing thing is putting your plants into pots,
right,
and growing them on the patio rather than out in the yard in your garden. That soil would naturally, I would think, tend to be a finer type of soil that you're putting in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Typically, we're going to put a potting soil in there, which is has a lot of peat in it, and it might have perlite, which is the white stuff, and vermiculite is another ingredient that'll be in there. And so those are much lighter and much more open, porous, drain very well. So we need to water.
You need to water a little
pretty
more
regularly.
often.
Yes. Yeah. A day like yesterday, that pot would have dried out maybe twice, depending on the size of the plant that's in there and how much water it needs. And but yeah, so that's a whole different ball game there. And another way you can do the garden, not have to till the, either plow it or spade it up, and then rototill it all, is to kind of do the rows. Don't do in between the rows.
Okay.
Kind of do your layout, and strip till is essentially what they call that, because you're going in a straight row or strip. You just till that area, and especially, it's one thing to plant transplants, because we can just dig a little hole, stick that transplant in. If we're seeding things, it becomes a little more challenging to not have some reasonably fine soil to work with, where we've worked it up enough that we can make a little furrow, and then we can drop those seeds in there and get them covered up and get them tucked in the way they need to be, to have good soil seed contact, to germinate.
If you were to do it that way, a little contour within your garden, weed control would be a big problem, would it?
Yeah.
Would it not?
Well, it can be less because you've not disturbed in between each row. You've only disturbed the row. So we've churned that soil, so that allows new seeds to come up to the top and germinate. But that way, in between the rows, you haven't touched that, and you can mulch that. Okay. To help with weed control, whether it be a bark mulch or a straw mulch, or even laying paper down, and you can do that in the row too. Once you've worked that soil up enough that you can get your seeds planted, then you can still even come in and use a mulch over top of that to help with keep the weeds down.
My neighbor was showing me some wonderful things that he's taken out. He's already on his third go of lettuce, but he's got some wonderful radishes that he's grown already this year, and he's enjoying a good gardening season so far. But he told me that one thing that he tried this year that he's not tried in the past was tenting using old newspaper. And so he's been tenting his rows using that old newspaper. And he says, in particular, it works because of the way that the newspaper collects moisture in the overnight. At least by his theory, that's one of the things that works.
Yeah, you're still creating a bit of an environment there, a protected environment, and that, and usually we get warming when that happens, and so that can not only warm the soil, but then make a warmer environment for the plants to grow too. Yeah. Right, and then conserve moisture. Think about, because it could stay damper. With the newspaper, that would shade the ground a little more. And so you could hold moisture in a little better that way versus out in the open sun.
Yeah. Saw something this week that I hadn't seen for a while, and it was germane to something that we were talking about a week or so ago here on the program. We were talking about very tall trees, 100-foot trees, and how to get those dead branches out of the top. And I saw an Amish crew actually. They were actually in the tree, crawling along like squirrels with chainsaws, and they were trimming out the tops of the trees for all of the dead stuff. And that was really fascinating to watch how quickly they did it. But we don't think of work crews that actually specialize in that. I would bet if people learned about it, they'd be awful busy, because there are a lot of people that have trees in that boat.
Yes.
It's not easy to put a tree in a boat, I know.
No. Yeah. They're swimming in the same stream, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. But that is an actual thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The professional name for that's an arborist.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And you can become certified in that. And, yeah, there are people that specialize in tree care and maintenance, and that fits into that category.
Yeah. Yeah. So
But yeah, that's... Yeah, with the recent storms and damage that's occurred and all of that.
People are thinking about that now.
Well, yeah, we should be thinking about that on a more regular basis, and not just when the catastrophic event comes.
Yeah.
But we tend to do that in a lot of things.
That's what we do.
Let things be until they're not.
That's what we do. People, you do need to assess which way is that tree leaning. If that tree were to come down, which way would it go? And if it's going to come down on the roof of your house, then you have to do some thinking there.
And sometimes it can be leaning one way, and when the storm comes, just the way the winds or the turbulence is, it goes a different way.
Yeah.
But yeah, just taking note of trees, what they're doing, what they're not doing. Do I have dead limbs up in there? Just on a normal day, and I've noticed some just trees around coming out slowly, or portions have leafed out, and now there's portions that haven't leafed out.
Yeah.
And so there's a number of reasons that can happen, but there could be damage, if otherwise it was fine. There could be some damage up there from some of those heavy winds that really wasn't evident at the time. The trees seemed to be standing fine, but now that it's leafing out, and I was thinking about, if we'd have been 2 or 3 weeks ahead of where we were, there were a lot of trees that had either the buds hadn't opened yet, or we just had small leaves on those trees.
Yeah.
If you think about if those were in full leaf,
the weight,
the wind, the wind hitting against that, could have been a lot worse than than it was. Yeah, people aren't, we probably aren't as aware as we should be of A, the weight of the leaves on the tree, and B, the sailboat effect of it. Yep.
Because the wind will hit those and it'll act like a sail, and it'll want to move the tree in that direction. And
then you get multiple stemmed trees that, they've been there for 20, 30 years like that, but every year, each one of those main trunks grows in diameter, size, weight, and depending on the structure and the angles and all that, and what's going on at the base where those multiple leaders come together, there can be decay down in there that's not evident unless you really look.
Yeah.
And still then, and poke around and see, is everything stable or not? And, there were trees like that came down in that storm.
Get yourself an arborist. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
It's Indiana in the Morning. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, WCCSradio.com.
At First Commonwealth Bank, we know that financial confidence begins with the right account for the way you manage your money. All of our checking accounts are packed with online tools, including Credit Score Manager, with 24/7 access to your credit report.